Well, hello, and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 148. I'm Tristan Jutra,
I'm Will Silver.
And I'm Gray Williams.
once again in disembodied audio form only. How goes the tech troubleshooting, Gray?
If I had $1 for every time that I was told I needed a new main board, I'd have $2, which is not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
To the same machine, or was one your previous MacBook Pro?
The 2019.
Right.
I'm starting to think it's me.
You got to stop dragging your feet on the carpet, and then
I said need to stop dragging the laptop on the carpet. Realize what it is.
Exactly. Well, if you want to follow all of Gray's trials and tribulations and that of the rest of Momentous team, you can follow us at www.momentous.tv. Actually, visit us there, and then you can find the links to follow us, at momentous.tv/links and momentous.tv/team to follow us individually. And, you can find all our podcast episodes at momentous.tv/podcasts. I just like clicking things so they all appear on the screen nicely for those of you who are watching. So once again, the lovely and talented Tasia Custodia is not with us, but maybe in a few weeks she's I had a chat with her the other day. She's in the middle of this massive project, this course she's been developing, which will be a great tie-in to her YouTube channel, and it'll be great to get news from her on it. But right now, she is still experiencing living hell every day, just working way too much, making all that happen. But sooner or later, we'll get her back. But in the meantime, we're going to take the opportunity to take advantage of her absence and talk a bunch of gaming stuff today and other nerdery. But first, let's start with a little bit of follow-up. This one is a couple weeks old. I was hoping she'd come back before we got to it, but alas, it was not to be. Bluesky, which we talked about maybe a year and a half ago or so, which was a secret project at Twitter. Well, Twitter was still under the purview of its co-founder, Jack Dorsey, and it was to be a decentralized version of Twitter. So another microblogging / real-time social network. I believe, is that the one was it original name T2, or is that something else? Bluesky, it turns out, is the name of the the CEO. The translation of her first name it translates to Bluesky, but she goes by the name Jay. Anyhow, for the longest time, Bluesky was only available to those with an invitation, and those who got in the network then had a certain number of invitations they were able to share. There was a months-long wait list. I finally got in a few months ago, and honestly hadn't used it a whole lot. It's interesting to compare it to what we've seen on Threads and Mastodon. The idea being that this new generation of real-time microblogging style social networks will be federated, part of the Fediverse, so that they'll all be able to talk to each other. That future has not really arrived yet, but Gray, you've had some experience with Mastodon. I expect you've played with Threads. Have you had a chance to use Bluesky at all? And what are your thoughts on the progress of the Fediverse so far as an alternative to what we've seen from the monolithic platforms?
So I do have a Bluesky account. It was one of those things where I signed up when Elon sort of did his elongation. And it's interesting because I like the overall impact on my life has been a complete reduction in Twitter-like activities, which used to take up a lot of my time, which explains why I'm getting so much done around here now.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah. So I mean, how is the Fediverse? I'm seeing a lot of stuff kind of happening there. Threads obviously burned brightly, and I don't know that it definitely hasn't got that luminance. And I don't know that it necessarily will. I think Zuck was kind of like, okay, maybe we can grab some of this traffic, and they did, and so looking at this right now. First of all, a couple things. Didn't know that Bluesky posts were called skeets. Fascinating.
They might want to rethink that one, but anyhow.
Yeah, well, I mean,
don't Google it, folks.
Yeah. Woo. We're taking back the word. But
Skeet Ulrich would like to have a word.
exactly, like looking at this, the best advertisement for Mastodon and Blue Sky is Twitter, right? Like it's just, if you look at Twitter right now and you're like, I am so effing tired of this, but I still kind of want this. We have this at home,
I wish I knew how to quit you.
right? And so
No, that's quite the reference.
so in any case, I've looked at I've looked at my Mastodon app, I've looked at my Blue Sky app today, recently, about 30 seconds ago. That's the last time that I have touched those in the last 6 months. I don't know what it's going to take to get me back into consuming news in that sort of way. It almost feels like other things are aggregating the Twitter fed right now for me. So yeah.
And if you're not motivated to participate in like conversations on any of these networks, then like you said, it can end up freeing up a whole bunch of time for you, and maybe a bit more productive than arguing with strangers on the internet.
Would you believe? Would you believe I've had Elvis versus JXL, a little less conversation, a little more action in my head for the last couple of weeks, and now we know why.
Perfect. How about you, Will? I know that when Threads lit up last year, to continue Gray's metaphor there, and they were jump-started by the fact that it was very easy to flip a switch and basically move over from Instagram or add on to Instagram, because they're basically using your Instagram identities. And Meta, as owner of Instagram, is committed to making Threads a full partner in the Fediverse eventually, and they're making slow but sure steps to make that happen. And now Blue Sky is, like I said, he's kind of got the Twitter heritage there. How do you find, Will, that your use of these sorts of platforms, which have definitely a place in the world, is that real-time breaking news medium, which no one has seemed to dislodge Twitter, now X, from? It's hard to get that critical mass to dislodge it. How do you find that your use of Twitter/X, Threads, and or Blue Sky, if you're on it, has it increased or decreased since this kind of great fragmentation over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I have used Threads maybe twice in the last year. I have hardly ever gone on. My Twitter usage has gone down. My X/Twitter usage has gone down about 1,000%. I think I go on once a month. I used to go on every day, a few times, just checking the soccer news, checking other updates. Really, the only time I go on now is for work, to check out, our posts and make sure the links are working or what have you, because connects to other projects I'm doing. But or once in a while, I'll just check out reactions that people are having to things that we've launched at work. But I don't really go on for myself anymore. I never go on to any of the soccer Twitters that I used to go on daily basis. And now I just don't. So, and one of the big things for me is not being able to look on a website. When they stopped that and that stopped working properly, and that was like a pain in the ass. So
you had to log in order to see stuff.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if you've got one or more accounts, that shouldn't be a big deal. But if you're in like a incognito mode or private mode or whatever, then it's kind of a pain.
Yeah. So I just don't look on my phone all the time. So
gotcha.
So I just never use it.
So I wonder if there's a couple of things going on here. One is just the poop show that has been Twitter over the last year and a half or more, and this notion that there are all sorts of options for this kind of thing, but the social networks, they benefit by having critical mass. So there's a bit of a problem here. And I think one of the reasons why Facebook continues to be successful and continues to grow is that they've got between 2 and 3 billion people on there every month. It's massive, and it's hard to dislodge that. Whereas Twitter, on the other hand, at its peak, was only seeing about 330 million monthly active users, and a lot of those folks weren't super committed. The dailies were I think about more like 100 million. And, but it had that hold on the culture, given how many people of its users were, politicians, celebrities, athletes, journalists, and what news junkies and the like. But since so many people have kind of gone off Twitter due to its current leadership and other changes in policy, and there's not been enough critical mass on Threads or on Bluesky or on Mastodon, which and Mastodon especially is decentralized by its nature, and there's some people are having issues with that. So, well, I mean, what's it going to take to replace Twitter, either to rehabilitate Twitter or to replace Twitter as that beating pulse of the web news? And like right now, it's still Twitter. Like when the Super Bowl's on or the Oscars are on, or whatever, Twitter's still the place where most people go, because that's where a lot of the big shots still are. So you can hang out on Threads and Bluesky and Mastodon, and you may have more people from your own community there, but you're not going to necessarily get the mainstream there. So it's such a weird thing, and I wonder if part of it is also in the post quote unquote post-pandemic world, where so much of us were so online that maybe there's a bit of a reaction to that. It's like we maybe don't want to spend quite so much time online anymore and really cherish our in-person interactions, going out and doing things in the real world, whether it's going to movies or concerts or other sort of live events, just getting together and spending time with people we know and love, rather than, like we said, interacting with these very very thin relationships online, or complete strangers. Like why do we want to spend more time with complete strangers online when we can just spend more time with each other, or spend more time creating? Which, Gray, it sounds like you've had been focusing on it. I think all of us on our team has been focusing on that more. But part of the challenge there is we also need to promote what we create. So then we start using social media as a broadcast medium, which is fine, but it kind of, you can only get you so far. You actually need to engage with people in order to get the algorithms juiced so that your message spreads even further. So it's a weird bit of catch-22 that we're in. Gray, anything to add before we move on this story?
I think the last thing about that is, by taking a break and stepping away from social media, as I start to think about how I'm going to re-engage with those platforms, I'm not as exhausted as I was. And because I feel like I have something to contribute that is not part of the discourse, it's more like I'm presenting a thing for, here for your evaluation or purchase or whatnot. It feels a lot less stressful to me. The things that I'm working on right now are not the issues that I've been railing about for years. And I don't think I'm going to get back into that conversation. I think I could probably do more work on those things, again, person to person. But it feels like I'm ready to take on social media on my terms rather than on its terms. And that feels better to me.
All right. Well, we all owe Elon a big thank you for blowing up Twitter. And let's move on. So some other follow-up. We've had a few updates on the Apple Vision Pro, the excitement, the release, the hands-on reviews by those who had review units, the hands-on reviews by those who have purchased units. And now, just like clockwork, the backlash has started. And so news stories all over the place. So Apple fans are starting to return their Vision Pros, citing things like comfort, headache, and eye strain as among the top reasons that people are returning these things. Well, what a surprise that people who spent $3,500 at least on something and maybe haven't been able to figure out how it fits into their life, and they haven't been able to determine the full value for that price, that maybe some of them might go back. There are some people who maybe just wanted to check it out and bring it back. It seems like the numbers are maybe slightly above average from some of the reports on the from the street, from various Apple stores, that the returns are slightly higher than expected. But I'm not sure if it's time to start panicking yet, given that it's such early days. And then we're only at about, I think we started at 500 native apps at launch. We're up to 600. And I think we're up to 1,200 native apps now for the Apple Vision Pro. So again, imagine like the original iPhone 1 month in, and they didn't even have an apps until 11 months later, right? So it's just interesting to see how the narrative, changes on these things. And it's like, oh, now it's, Apple's doomed once again, because even Apple fans or fanboys are even bringing it back, and that's fair enough. Some people will get headaches or discomfort, and this thing is it's not a light device, that's for sure. Will, any thoughts on this, having seen this hype cycle over and over again in our long careers as tech observers?
I mean, it's the same kind of story. It's kind of clockwork. Maybe it's a higher than expected, but I'm not too shocked. I mean, I think also maybe all the people got out there driving with headsets, Apple Vision Pro headsets on, and skateboarding and spending 48 hours straight and whatever other dumbass thing they were doing. And then they're like, okay, I got the videos and the Instagram, so I'm going to return it now.
And the brain damage to show for it.
And the brain damage. So, I mean, like, yeah, it's a bit of a craze, and people just do dumb things during these web crazes. The first person to do something, it's always such a big thing. And I think probably a lot of people also jumped on the bandwagon in the sense that, oh, this is exciting, but then didn't really have a good idea what they were going to do with it. Yeah. So
there's the FOMO and then now what?
Yeah, I mean, especially at that price, if you're like, I'm not really using it, why did I get this again? It's like, I think that's one of the challenges that this device has from the beginning, and we've sort of talked about it. Is like, what is the value add to someone's life? What is this going to do? And I think you guys mentioned it as well too. Like, what's the killer app? Like we talked about with the Apple Watch, like the fitness apps and all that kind of stuff are kind of one of the killer apps. The EKG and all the other crazy things that you can do with it, and so what is the killer app here? And as you said, like even the iPhone or the iPod, it took a while for it to take off. So just calm down, people. It's like the sky's not falling. It's like an ice age. We're going to have to look back at it to see if it was successful or not. It's hard to tell once you're in it if it's an ice age or not. So I think we need to look back at this in a year or two and see if it keeps going, and if people are buying it in big numbers and the price has gone down. But this is always the thing too. It's like the price is going to be super high because of early adopters, and then it'll start. I mean, it's never going to get down to $100, but it'll get more affordable, less crazy, and more powerful in the next 2 to 5 years. And let's see where it's at then. Let's not judge it 2 months into basically a 1.0 product.
Exactly. Well, you make a good point about the killer apps, and sometimes they're not entirely obvious. As you mentioned with the Apple Watch, it became clear after a couple of years, after Apple tried to make it like, oh, your computer on your wrist with all sorts of apps that you could get from the Apple Watch App Store, that really health and fitness was where it's at. And as such, it's kind of like really decimated the market for other fitness trackers, including Fitbits and the like. So,
Can I just add one thing? This is sort of a side point now that we're talking about Apple Watch. I now feel like my mom, because, my mom is not a big adopter of technology. And so when she answers on her cell phone, she always answers going, I'm talking to you on my cell phone. And so I've started answering my phone on my watch, and I find myself going, hey, hi, how's it going? I'm talking to you on my watch. And I'm just like, what am I, Dick Tracy? And it's like, is this how my mom feels?
Well, so, and maybe in a couple of years, I'm talking to you on my Apple Vision Pro, which still can't take phone calls yet, by the way. You can do FaceTime calls, but you can't receive phone calls with the Apple Vision Pro. But I'm sure that's coming. And then as regards, like with the iPod, it was pretty clear what the killer app was, because it was music. But with the iPhone, of course, it was the internet communicator, the phone, and what was the three things? Great. Help me out here. What was the three things that Steve Jobs kept talking about?
Web browser, internet communicator.
Oh yeah, web browser, internet communicator, and phone. But with the iPhone, as it turns out, it was the App Store was the killer app, right?
Yeah.
And that was a year later. With the Apple Vision Pro, a couple of contenders could very well be the workspace, the spatial computing workspace. Some people are loving having windows like all over the place, persistent windows in their physical workspace whenever they put the headset on. Being able either to work on its own or have your Mac screen appear as part of that. But then there's the entertainment side, which people are really enjoying as well, whether it's at home or on an airplane or something like that. Now, Gray, as our official VR AR correspondent here at Momentous, and probably the one with the most experience, having had a Meta Quest device for a while, what advice would you give to folks that are having trouble with the comfort level, the headaches, the eye strain, and the like with the Apple Vision Pro?
First things first, if you wear corrective lenses, wear your corrective lenses.
Good point.
Second thing, limit your time. But the one thing that I did notice with my own experience was that as I continued to use the headset, the motion sickness went away. So you don't want to be sitting down for long. Like when I first got the Meta Quest 2, 45 minutes was about what I could handle. I could sit there for a couple of hours now if I had to. I find, again, typically Beat Saber being my interaction of choice with that particular platform. I don't have hours in me. It's I will die. But if you're sitting there and it's like any other computing platform, Apple's put this stand up thing into the watch for a reason. We spend far too long locked in on these different systems. If you're feeling ill, take it off. I imagine we've seen things like carpal tunnel, right? As a society, we're becoming more and more nearsighted. There are impacts that technology is having on us. We are adapting, and maybe not in the best of ways. So if something is making you uncomfortable, don't use it. What I would say with the headaches, the biggest thing is probably the fit on that comfort band. I did find for myself when I got a higher quality band for the Meta Quest 2 that actually took the weight off and actually disperses it a little bit more like the Vision Pro does. It helped. Now the interesting thing is the battery on the headset that I've got, it puts the weight on the back of your head, which I think a lot of folks are saying the Vision Pro, because it's put the battery in a battery pack on your belt, because it is forward heavy, that may be causing some issues for some folks. We're in a whole new realm of technology here where, yes, there have been lots of players, but there have been billions of human beings who have not even thought about touching one of these things yet. And there are going to be physical issues that pop up. So right now, if you got eye strain, make sure you're wearing glasses. I would
Don't forget to blink.
Yeah.
That's something that happens. We forget. We're staring at things so intently. Like it's been shown that we don't blink nearly as often. And what do you know? Dry eyes, redness, etc. Just
I will say that attacks by the weeping angels have been down by a good 90% because of it.
Right. Don't blink.
Don't blink. Don't even blink. But eye drops are great. And when I say eye drops, don't go with Visine. It's a vasoconstrictor. You want to take a look at Bion's Natural Tears or another saline-based tear replacement. Bionz Natural Tears. There's actually a brand called Blink that is a natural tear replacement as well. A vasoconstrictor will just make your eyes hurt more, so don't go that way. Headaches. Is it too bright? Is the sound too high?
Oh yeah, some people are saying they were turning the brightness down on the Apple Vision Pro, no problem, and it was still plenty bright. So I think they have it cranked up.
I'm curious to know, because Apple has rolled out a safety limit for audio for AirPods and for the iPhone and other devices, where it says, this is a safe limit within which to listen for X period of time. How long before we have that limit for brightness for visual displays? Should that have happened a decade ago? Probably.
You know
I'm
what's
fresh to DeLoreans.
sorry, just to jump in on that, I have a funny anecdote I didn't tell you guys, but I was at Disneyland, I guess a week ago. I was in LA for a weekend, and I went to Disneyland a couple of times. And this is the first time I've been to Disneyland since I've gotten the Ultra 2. And I'd be on a ride, and I would feel my wrist vibrating, and I came off the ride, and it was giving me a sound warning. It's like, it has reached 90 decibels. If you experience this for 30 minutes or more, you could experience hearing loss. I'm like,
Dyson
yeah,
does that to me.
yeah.
I kid you not. My Dyson DC62, if I'm in a smaller room, will give me the sound warning.
I sometimes get the sound warning when I sneeze.
Really?
Nice.
It's like
hardcore.
My poor wife.
Now, if I recall correctly, you sneeze 7 times?
You often, up to that. It's rare when it's not quite that many, but with extreme prejudice come my sneezes. Well, I guess one other tip, maybe don't cross the street while wearing the Apple Vision Pro. Now, of course, we're at the point where people are sharing videos online. We had those who are doing the YouTube videos and driving with them on. Not a great idea. The skateboarding, the skiing, and all that. The stunt stuff. But then
the dumbass stuff.
Yeah, but then there was these cops were interacting with someone at the side of the road on the corner, and then there's a fellow wearing Apple Vision Pro and crossing at the crosswalk there, and the cops are kind of looking over the shoulder like, what is that dude doing? And of course they had to put a little alert from the police department saying, we really don't recommend you guys wear these outside out in public because there is a narrower field of vision, so your peripheral vision is somewhat limited. So, but of course, people are going to try these in all sorts of environments, but maybe for your safety, just like you shouldn't stare at your phone while you're crossing the street. Maybe be careful in the real world when you're wearing a headset. Other quick little follow-up. A few weeks ago, we talked about Bluesky, who had achieved the unthinkable and crashed the Tetris, original version of Tetris on the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. He got to the kill screen, which was a pretty cool achievement. But since then, there's been all sorts of additional milestones being met and records being broken, and it's kind of akin to the whole thing with the 4-minute mile. It seems like once someone broke the 4-minute mile, was it Roger Bannister? And I think it happened at Empire Stadium here in Vancouver.
It did. Yeah, there's a statue there.
Yeah. So now people are like beating Bluesky's score and hitting the kill screen and all this sort of stuff. So it's just in the Pixel Andy was the latest to do this. So and all these the rolling technique that people have adopted over the last few years to be able to control the drops of the various tetrominos to the bottom. It seems to be helping a lot, but. I'm still waiting for a rematch with Naomi on this, and I don't know if
she will destroy you. Yes, you don't want that rematch.
But we'll drop a link in the show notes about the phenomenon and how it's just another amazing example of human achievements being unlocked. It just takes one brave soul to get there, and then others will follow behind.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll get on to some new gaming-ish news, starting with something that a tool that wasn't initially for gaming per se, but has a new gaming add-on, which we'll get to in just a moment. Greg, can you give us a little background as to exactly what the Flipper Zero is, and maybe some of the controversy that has emerged thereof, and then we'll talk a bit more fun angle to it after that.
Yeah, so the Flipper Zero is it's referred to as a multi-tool device for geeks. And it is a delightful little toy. Well, I shouldn't say toy. It's a delightful little tool that looks like a toy. I kickstarted this thing way, way, way back in the day. It has radio protocols. It has GPIO. It has smart button. It's got tons of different features in here. Micro SD card. It's got IR built in, and so
infrared control.
Here, it's got sub gigahertz, 125 kilohertz radios, which are the type of things that you will find in NFC readers. It also will do things like you can program it to operate your garage door. And so it's an open source, customizable piece of hardware. And it's just a really nicely packaged piece of hardware. The software that runs it, the official software, has the firmware basically locks out a lot of the things that people would find questionable or frustrating. And some of those things would include things like receiving the rolling codes from your car to unlock your car, to start your car. And so as a tool, as a toy for geeks, for pen testers or penetration testers, as they're referred to, there's a fellow named Deviant Olam on YouTube. Is a great follow there. These are folks that will basically test the security, the physical security of your building. Or your location. They do some really cool stuff, like they've figured out how to open up infrared or thermal sensor doors by spraying a can of compressed air, because all it does is it tracks a change in temperature. So you spray that through the door, because usually it's on the inside, and it will open the doors for you, even when it shouldn't. So this thing was developed in Russia prior to the invasion of Ukraine. They've since moved to, I believe, Los Angeles. I guess they really do not want to be connected with what's going on there. And it's a great little tool. Now, I should say
take note, Kaspersky Labs, while you're at it. But anyhow.
Exactly. I should say that because it is open source, there are a number of custom firmwares out there. And loading a custom firmware is as simple as downloading the firmware file and clicking update firmware. Those firmwares can let you do things like download libraries for the RFID locks that, say, for example, my building operates on. And my building uses a rolling code. And it also uses an incremental code. So basically, every time you fob in, it checks to see that fob it increments that number. And if it has another fob that has the same ID with the same number, it won't let somebody in, which is a really tricky thing to get around. So it also, can be used to do things like copy NFC devices. So all of Nintendo's Amiibo figurines can be found as a single downloadable file, where you can just upload you can just activate the NFC profile that you want to use, hold it to the Switch or the Wii U, and it will actually read that as that Amiibo figurine. It's kind of, digital piracy of a physical thing. Absolutely fascinating. So the Canadian government recently came out last week, I believe. Mr. Champagne came out and said that, we're not doing enough to combat car theft. And as such, we're going to take a look at banning devices like the Flipper Zero, which is hilarious, because considering, you can own a handgun, but you can't own a Flipper Zero, makes that kind of a bit of a giggle. I believe I said on Twitter, what did I say? I can't recall.
It was clever, though. We'll just go with
it was, something like it's only champagne if it's from the ignorant department of the Canadian government. Otherwise, it's just sparkling stupidity. That was the one. So
well played.
Thank you. This device is, you can look at it because it makes relatively trivial the process of breaking into things that people consider to be secure. A little like a coat hanger does to a car lock.
We got to ban coat hangers.
Got to ban coat hangers.
Ban coats.
We've also brought up the point that, like, if we're going to look at something and say it can be used for a crime, and therefore we should ban it, we get a long list, right? And so this device having multiple levels of functionality really, I think, is important to the conversation about, like, should this be something that we're allowed to have? Enter today's story about this, which is this is now a Game Boy.
And there's an add-on, a video game module add-on, and the module is powered by a Raspberry Pi developed RP2040 microcontroller and can run games programmed in C, C++, and MicroPython. So I didn't realize that the flipper was actually extensible like this. And
Yes.
so now folks, once they're done stealing cars, or they want to take a break from stealing cars, they can maybe just play some games. And this makes the Playdate look like PS5.
It's not a high power device, and this is the thing. The rolling codes that are used by most vehicles way beyond the capabilities of this. I believe it was Hyundai and might have been Kia.
Yeah.
I don't want to get that wrong. They had some vulnerabilities. Their solution to the vulnerabilities, instead of patching their software, was to send the club out to their users.
And that was only in the States too, because they didn't have the immobilizers, as it was a cost saving thing. So
Yeah.
these Kia and Hyundais were targeted by what's now known as the Kia boys. And
Nice.
but in Canada, I mean, there's other issues, and it's hard to. But there are tons and tons of cars being stolen all the time and shipped overseas in containers. We've known that's been going on for a couple of decades out of the port of Vancouver here, but it just seems to have gotten really bad lately. And the flipper is just like the poster boy for this. There's all sorts of tools that can do it, but because this one has caught the attention of people online, now we're gonna the Canadian government wants to set an example. So here's a little pivot. You know what? Why would you? Canadian government, why would you take away this delightful multi-2 come gaming device from us when all we want to do is have fun?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the real thing here is we just need a version of Grand Theft Auto for the Flipper Zero, and we've come full circle. So cool little tool. It's got a motion sensor in it. I mean, the games are very, very basic. It actually already had games on it. My stock firmware does have Snake on it.
Brilliant.
The original Nokia Classic. So I like to think that I was ahead of the curve on this one.
All right. Well, of course, now that they've drawn attention to it, I wonder how much Streisand effect will kick in, and people will try desperately to get a hold of these before they get banned if they do, because I'd never even heard about it. And so Streisand effect is in effect now for sure. And
They were going for like $300 there for a little bit because scalpers had bought them all up. They're back in stock, but I think that this will have an upward degree of pressure on the price of these units. From
all right,
cold
guys.
dead hands.
Well, you can get the video game module for $49 US from shop.flipperzero.one, and maybe we should get a bunch of these and play games and steal cars.
Yeah.
All right.
Not in that order.
In other less dramatic news, the rumor mill has been spinning up in the last few weeks about a potential PlayStation 5 Pro. We've already had a quote-unquote slim version, a smaller, slightly scaled down, simplified version of the PS5 a couple months ago, and now there's talk about a quote-unquote Pro version. It's seems to be kind of standard life cycle for the various PlayStation devices. After the big boy comes out, then they've got a few variations, slim, pro, and otherwise. Now, in terms of what we might see in a Pro PS5, I mean, we're talking about updated specs, so I guess you could run with higher settings, better get more consistent frame rates on games that are really pushing the envelope and the like. Just very quickly, because we don't really trade too much in rumors here on Momentous Live. Just wanted to, as both PS5 owners here, what things, aspects of your current PS5 would you like to see some refinements of that might be addressed in a PS5 Pro or something of that nature?
I don't know. I can't think of anything.
It's all good in the hood.
It's all good in the hood. I mean, this is the normal life cycle, especially of PlayStations, of this, like slimming them down, chunking them up, putting stands, changing the form factor. They do this all the time. So
the third and final PS3 was terrible. I thought the first revision of the PS3 was beautiful and simple. The first one is iconic, of course, but the first revision was, I think, the epitome of the PS3. But the PS3 Slim is like, oh, that's gross.
I think they created like 20 PS2s. I mean, like there was all sorts of different varieties of the PS2.
Yeah.
So
and the 4 wasn't a huge, like the PS4 Pro. Was there a slim of the PS4? I don't recall, but PS4 Pro was kind of.
it's
just a bit
usually,
of a spec update, right?
I don't remember off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but that's usually usually the way that they go, that they throw it out.
They
A
had a
slim and a
slim,
pro.
Yeah. So you're pretty content with your PS5. How about you, Gray? If you could, ask for any improvements to the PS5 as is, and it could be something like heat or noise or capabilities. Are you getting the frame rates you'd like to see and the like? Anything on your wish list?
Honestly, for a Pro, the PS5 kind of did it for me.
It's pretty pro as it is.
A slight noise reduction would be great. Actually, here's the thing. Here's what I would absolutely love. I would like more USB ports.
Oh, because all right.
I've got a USB-C on the front. I got a USB-A on the front. I've got a USB-A on the back. I've got the camera port on the back. You know what? Double that up all around. We're good. But
it sounds like someone who's trying to fry their main board.
Dang it. Got him.
Be careful what you wish for.
But I do find myself like I've got an external hard drive plugged into the back. I've usually got a controller charging on the front. If you need to plug in a microphone for Rock Band or something like that, if you're using a PlayStation 4 controller so you can use the microphone without having to mute, it's a whole shebang. So I do think some more USB ports would be nice.
All right. Well, we'll see what actually materializes maybe sometime this year for those who want even more, or maybe push some people over the edge who are still happy with their PS4s. All right. Moving over to the Microsoft side of the gaming world. Last Thursday, there was a big Xbox podcast, which featured Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer, Xbox President Sarah Bond, head of Xbox Studios Matt Booty. Now, Will, you brought this big set of Xbox updates to our attention. What would you say were the highlights of the discussion from last Thursday?
I would say that there's two big things that were discussed, and I believe we talked about the first point a few weeks ago. The sort of internet, the scuttlebutt on the social medias was pretty negative too. I think it was at GDC they mentioned that they were going to turn a couple games cross-platform, and immediately people jump to the most extreme. Starfield, this big brand new exclusive, is going to go to PlayStation, and all the Indiana Jones that just got released is going to go to PlayStation. So part of sort of the first half of this this podcast was just saying the sky's not falling. Game Pass, we're still happy with it. We're trying something a little bit new. And I think we even mentioned this on this live stream, that they're just porting a few games that have been out for a while, nothing new, nothing big, and basically just extending the life of a few games that sort of reached a bit of a natural a peak on Game Pass, and just experimenting. A friend of mine who's very follows the video game industry very closely said basically Xbox is third, and they're trying something new to try to sort of go out there. They're testing the waters. They're not going to be big games. There's a couple rumors about some of the games. Sea of Thieves, that's been out for a few years, is not a game that most people have heard of, or the average person might have heard of, but is an exclusive. That's one of the ones that's rumored. So these are not, they still see value in Game Pass. They're going to be nurturing the exclusivity of some of these things, but they're looking at other avenues to extend, the life and the profitability and the reach of some games.
And And wasn't part of the whole idea of bringing some games to the other platforms part of concessions to various regulators as part of Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, because there was concerns about the aggregation of too much power into Microsoft's hands, and so I think that was so they're going to throw a few bones to the other platforms like the PS5 in this case.
Possibly. I mean, I mean, of course,
it took a year and a half for that deal to finalize, by the way.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and I mean that was the second half, is that they were talking about the Activision Blizzard deal, but they didn't mention that specifically.
They're just being nice guys.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes games do kind of go cross-platform, but they tend to be games like Grand Theft Auto that was sort of a PlayStation exclusive, and then later in its life cycle, went on Windows and other platforms. But that was a third party. It wasn't a first party like Xbox. They also, take it for what it's worth. Obviously, they're a little biased in this, but I thought there was some really interesting discussion about the nature of games and exclusivity, and that they were sort of discussing like it's less about the hardware these days and more about the gaming communities. So, things like Roblox or Fortnite or, Gray, your Destiny 2, these are communities, and the hardware isn't as important as the connection to that community. So, I mean, I thought that was a very interesting explanation of things. And we are seeing games trying to go cross-platform, and, platforms like Steam becoming more important, that it doesn't really matter, sort of where you're playing it. It's just another avenue to purchase the game, sort of like iTunes. It's like it's just an MP3. It's like, where are you playing it? It doesn't matter if it's in your car or on your iPhone or on your iPad or your computer or whatever it is. So that was kind of interesting, some of that discussion. That was sort of the first half, was calm down, nerds, nothing's happening, stop. And at one point, I think he even said like, stop jumping to conclusions and creating problems that don't exist. So yeah, but basically that was a lot of it. And then the second half was talking about the merger with Bethesda, Activision Blizzard kind of thing. Activision Blizzard, and then the big sort of announcement. I'm a little jaded. I think the bone that they were throwing to us was Diablo 4 is coming out on Microsoft systems on March 28th. So on Game Pass. So that was kind of the big announcement. But again, the first half was just like, the sky is not falling. Please stop creating problems that don't exist.
Just a quick thing on the whole business model side of things. I think maybe the writing's on the wall as regards the hardware versus the software, especially you mentioned the power of community, with so many games having like being subscription based or having DLCs or other revenue opportunities throughout the lifespan of a game, that really the money maybe is largely in the software more so than the hardware nowadays. So wouldn't you want your game to be on as many platforms as possible? And the exclusives are great for driving hardware sales, but if you're making more money on the software at the end of the day, then hey, let's get it everywhere, sort of thing.
Yeah, but I think this is part of it, like with Game Pass, is they're selling Game Pass, and it's like, if you buy Game Pass, this game is exclusive on Game Pass, right? And that's why some people were freaking out, because they're like, hey, I paid for Game Pass. Well, why is it now people can buy on PlayStation? I thought that when I bought Game Pass, I'd be the only one playing Starfield, not those PlayStation guys. So this is part of, people are freaking out that other people are going to be playing Starfield. So it's like, or the new Indiana Jones game that just got announced. They're like, oh, they're going to announce it for PlayStation. No, they're not. Stop doing that. Of course they're not. So, it's just like, I do agree with them. There's a lot of just people, when there's a vacuum and nobody's saying anything, then people just jump to conclusions and say stupid stuff. So I think that's part of what was going on.
So just to fill in some of the blanks here, Game Pass is adding 6 upcoming games, including Bluey, the video game, on February 22nd, Maneater and Madden NFL 24 on February 27th, Indivisible on February 28th, and Space Engineer on February 29th. And Warhammer 40,000 Bolt Gun will arrive on March 5th. And then leaving the service, there are 2 games that are leaving the service, and those are Madden NFL 22 and Soul Hackers 2. So, I mean, I'm not a Game Pass subscriber myself, but from my understanding, you're paying a monthly fee, and then you're able to play these games not only on your Xbox console, but also on your Windows PC and through cloud gaming as well on compatible devices. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So one of the other aspects of this discussion that kind of came up in passing had to do with the future of one's game purchases. So in one part, he alluded to the fact that they're going to do whatever they can to maintain servers and protect people's digital purchases. They want to respect the library that players have built over time, but also as a very brief part of that conversation was the commitment to still producing games on discs. So physical media, which we've talked about a few times here on Momentous Live. And we've talked about how when sometimes you acquire digital media just solely online, you might not necessarily own it. You sort of have an extended license to it. But if servers shut down or rights change, sometimes we find things disappear from our libraries. So despite what they're saying to being committed to the integrity of people's online game libraries, they will continue to make discs for certain games as long as there's demand. So basically, he said, the Microsoft will follow what the customers are doing. This is sort of amidst the news that there may be an all digital Xbox Series X coming. The Series S, which is slightly less powerful device, from my understanding, already doesn't have a disk drive, but the Series X does, just like the PS5, has a version with and or without the Blu-ray player for physical media, not just games but also movies. So, I mean, it's a little bit of like they're saying, well, we'll just follow what customers are doing, and they don't have a need to drive that disproportionate to customer demand. So I guess the news to anyone who loves physical media and likes the idea of actually owning your games is go out and buy them. Because then if you want, you can give them to other people. You can resell them if you want. We got to keep GameStop going. Gray, any thoughts on what we've talked about here so far with the Xbox news of some of the various points, including what we're talking about here with the digital libraries and physical media commitments, as soft as they may sound, coming from Xbox's Phil Spencer?
Well, I think the most interesting thing that I saw in all of this was the 10% of Xbox gaming is happening in the cloud. I think this is where there may be some crossover in the future as far as market share goes with Sony versus Microsoft. Nintendo, it always feels like you're going to have something in your hand that runs the thing if you were in the Alps with absolutely no signal in a snowstorm. Sony has sort of tried to bridge the gap of giving you powerful hardware, but also some really powerful connected network features. The PlayStation Network is, considering what Xbox Live what it was when it launched and its dominance for so long, PlayStation, Sony, they really, really dug in and delivered something awesome. If Microsoft can continue to deliver good cloud gaming experiences, because it sounds like they are, they don't have to put out great hardware.
Because the idea is that you could run this on any device that they make the client software available on. So this is like game streaming. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting to think about. I know for myself, like, I built a gaming PC. I've got a PlayStation 5 to play this one game that I haven't played in like 4 months. Yeah, kind of went the way of Twitter. But I'm trying to think right now what it would get to get me to put down a hunk of money for a new system. I'll buy a new game at some point, but I don't know that I'm really in the market for another $600-700 for faster, better, prettier. The PlayStation 5 is there. What Microsoft hasn't been able to do is get me to buy an Xbox One consonant yet. And that's because
Insert
it's just
consonant here.
But
it's just not that interesting right now.
by the way, that was one of the huge controversies about the Xbox One, was that you always had to be connected. And that was one of the big things. And part of that was about, cutting out the third party resellers of discs and all this kind of stuff, but also just, some of what they wanted to do about trying to be more connected and Game Pass and all that. And that was a huge controversy with the Xbox One, so much so that they had to go back on it, and the nickname was the Xbox 180 because obviously you had the 360 before, but they also you have to be connected, and then people freaked out. So it was the Xbox 180.
Sony won that E3 simply by having two executives on stage with one handing a physical game to another.
Yeah.
I don't know that we still live in that world.
Yeah, I don't think we do. I think we have caught up. I think in some ways, I mean, you can criticize the Xbox One, but I think also it was kind of ahead of its time and people weren't ready for that kind of always being connected. People like the idea of not, people throw I think that E3, someone was like, I'm on a nuclear submarine for the U.S. military. I want to play an Xbox. What can I play an Xbox One? And that's where the head of Xbox went, but there's a device for you. It's called the Xbox 360. And the headlines were let him eat Xbox 360.
That's right. So much for thank you for your service. Wow.
Yeah.
As long as you service every 30 days, you're fine.
Yeah.
You just got to come up. You just got to breach, get that connection. So it's interesting here. This notion of the 10% of all Xbox gaming is cloud based. So this game streaming, and what Phil Spencer was saying is that it's not typical console gamers that are using it, but new markets. So cloud game streaming seems to be a growth area for Microsoft here, and I mean, we saw Google take a swing at this with Stadia and then they shut it down. And I wonder if it was more that just Google didn't have that gaming DNA per se. But I always thought you got to have a rock solid, pretty beefy connection for this to work. And you can't just be in a lab in Silicon Valley and expect everyone's going to have the same connection quality as you. I mean, Gray, you've had enough trouble with a high speed cable connection that you've got there. So. Yeah. Do you think it was just with Google? Do you think it was just they were too early, or there wasn't a good cultural fit? Do you think that things will continue to grow in game streaming, aka cloud gaming, and so that people don't actually even have to have the digital downloads or physical media to enjoy these games?
The question really is do you want to have that big iron in your pocket that's need the big battery to go with it, or do you need something that's got a good radio? Good radio is going to win.
The promise of 5G. When are they going to have a remote surgery game? Anyhow, speaking of physical media, Disney Movie Club is ending right when physical media is resurging. So we've seen over the last decade or so the revivicate. I can't even speak. That's what you get for trying to say fancy words. Revivification or revival. How about that? Of vinyl.
Testify.
The revinyl, even cassettes. You see hipsters buying cassettes at shows of their favorite bands. I don't know how many are actually playing them. Some of it's just to support your favorite artist, which I'm all for. And so they become more like collector's items than anything else. But we've had discussions in the culture and here on Momentous Live, and among other friends, people talking about I want to own movie X on 4K Blu-ray because I want the maximum quality and I don't want it taken away from me anytime. So there was this service called Disney Movie Club that I wasn't even aware of that had 10 million members and gave access to all sorts of titles in the Disney library, including all sorts of weird ones that no one even heard of, like Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy. What is that? So a lot of these titles were from maybe from Disney Channel, Disney Sunday Movies, and the like. Well, as it turns out, these physical copies of these strange and esoteric titles will no longer be available on Blu-ray or DVD, as the club, which has been going for over 2 decades, is going to be winding down, which seems contrary to some of the trends. But maybe these trends are just, maybe it's a Gen X boomer trend and not so much with the youngs. Any thoughts on this, Greg? Because I know that you have thoughts on physical media in general. And then we'll go to our Disney correspondent Will for his thoughts.
My thoughts on physical media are, really would have been real handy a couple times in the last week.
Right. With your connection.
It's been fascinating to see. Looking at this, Disney loves a vault. Like they really do. I think, Will, you'll probably speak to that a little bit. They do love a vault.
Lock it away.
I've got sealed Disney VHS tapes from my youth, because those are going to be worth something someday. Gen Z, come on, Discover Tape, man. You got this.
It's making a comeback. VCRs, man.
I think you hit it on the head. Disney Movie Club, which you did not know existed and had only 10 million members.
Only.
Where was the marketing for this thing? So, honestly, it sounds like a scam site. Buy some Disney bucks. We'll send you a DVD. We swear.
Are these DVD RWs?
DVDR Plus.
Oh, dang.
So,
Will, as our Disney official Momentous Live Disney correspondent, were you aware of Disney Movie Club? And either way, what are your thoughts on this whole thing shutting down, even though it has 10 million members?
I was not aware. So I had not heard of this before. It does strike me as something that they would do. They have a lot of, programs and plans and various subsidiaries and all this kind of stuff. So it doesn't shock me. I think it's sad. I think in my sense, we're maybe the 1% here where I believe in owning physical copies. I've had things go away that I have purchased, like X-Men Arcade on the iPad. I'm still bitter about that. So there are things that I've owned that I can know I spent, $10, $20 on that I can't use anymore. So go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, this feels like a reverse Michael Corleone, right? Just when I thought I was in, they pull me back out.
Yeah. So, and even people I know in the video game industry are like, if you like something, buy a physical copy of it. So I totally believe in that. That's why I like companies like Limited Run Games. They do small runs of, for big consoles, like digital games, that they'll do small runs for, like for the Nintendo Switch or the PS5, but they'll also do weird old things like the Nintendo 64 or the Super Nintendo and stuff like that. So there's a lot of fun things there. I guess that's where I would like things to go, but I'm in the minority, and it's expensive to make these things, particularly in huge batches. So I totally get that. But, I believe in supporting things like Limited Run Games and other companies that are making small runs. They do a lot of, if you look on their site, they do a lot of like clear red packaging for, or like the exclusive collector's edition in Ninja Turtle green or something, so they sort of try to make it collectors or exclusive, or they'll do a straight, if it's like, I don't know, a Super Nintendo cartridge, they might do it in gray, but then have like, 200 limited in like fuchsia, or something like that.
I like it.
Yeah.
So there seems to have been like this proliferation of specialty studios offering both things like video games and soundtracks, like video game soundtracks and movie soundtracks on vinyl. In addition to limited run games, we've got I Am 8-Bit is another one. And on the movie side, Criterion Collection has been a thing forever, but like Shout Factory and Scream Factory, Vinegar Syndrome, Kino Lorber, like there's all sorts of these interesting little like sort of boutique distributors that have garnered the rights for various some cult movies and otherwise, and have really found a following, and they've got apparently viable businesses digging up these nuggets from people's past. So they're playing into the nostalgia factor for some of them. So for Disney to kind of go contra the trend here is a little bit strange, I suppose. So speaking of Disney, we had another Deadpool 3 trailer.
Ooh,
I don't know if anyone in this in the present company here is at all excited about Deadpool 3, which is going to be called Deadpool and Wolverine. Will, any thoughts?
I'm psyched. I did watch this trailer, but now I'm done. I'm not watching the trailers anymore. I don't know. Actually, can you peek behind? I have a Wolverine sitting over there. Wolverine is my dude. Like, as a kid, he was sort of, as I got out of my childhood, and as I was becoming a tween and a teen, Wolverine was very popular. I was huge into the X-Men. My brother read the X-Men in the 80s, and I read a bunch of his old comic books. And also, very importantly, Wolverine was Canadian, and so he was cool. Wolverine is my dude. He's one of my favorite superheroes of all time. For many years, he was my favorite superhero. He's still, up there, and I love him very much. I have a very special feeling towards that character, and I'm excited to see him back. And I've enjoyed the first two Deadpool movies. I'm not the biggest Deadpool fan, I have to admit, but I do like the movies, and I'm interested in seeing Wolverine come back, most importantly. So let's see where this goes.
Gray, as someone who I believe has watched most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, along with Will and me, and we've done some marathons together as part of that too. I think we've discussed the diminishing returns with some of the recent efforts in both the movies and TV series over the last few years. Post Endgame is there's really been Marvel trying to find itself and keep people's interest. And now Deadpool and Wolverine, which is now in Marvel Studios, under Marvel Studios purview with the acquisition of Fox a couple of years ago. So they've got X-Men back and Fantastic Four back, and Deadpool and Wolverine as part of X-Men and whatnot. And this is Disney's first R-rated MCU movie, because it's going to be part of the MCU in some way. Do you think, as this article posits, that Deadpool 3 may actually save the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Or is it too late? Are people just done with superhero movies?
I think this is it. I think this is the moment where it all comes back. I think Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, they carry the franchise on their backs, and I think they will succeed.
All right. You heard it here first. So now that's going to set the stage. Every Marvel movie going forward is going to be a hard R.
Yes.
Lots of blue humor and ultra violence.
Nice.
All right. Speaking of ultra violence, let's get to our momentous picks this week, starting with William.
So my pick is I had to remember. The thing that I started getting obsessed with about a week ago, maybe it was 10 days ago, was while I was away, is this thing called Splice Create. Now, they emphasize that it is in beta, and basically what it is it is a tool to an AI based tool that basically puts what's called stacks. So it's samples from the Splice library, because Splice is a service that serves up samples and bits of music. So maybe chord sequences, or just one drum, or a whole 8 bars of kicks and snares. And basically it searches the whole library, and you'll put in maybe BPM and the genre, so hip hop, trap music, electro, EDM, drum and bass, house, something like that. And it will pick a bunch of the stacks, it'll create a stack for you. So it'll put guitar together, it'll put percussion, it'll put drums, it'll put bass line. And the results are pretty good, I have to say. Like, it's kind of scary. Most times, I find if you pick the genre, if you don't pick the genre, it's a bit of a cluster. But if you pick a genre, it's pretty good at putting things together that sound pretty good. So I've been pretty impressed with it and had a lot of fun. Obviously, you can see Tristan over there, how there's the refresh on the far right. So if you don't like, say, the bass drum, you can just refresh it and change it. So create another sample. It's like, I really like the drums, and I really like, the pads or the strings, but yeah, that bass line sucks. So you can just change the bass line. So, it's really kind of fun. And how it sparks a lot of ideas. And, I found it a very useful tool. It's kind of, I don't know if it sounds limited or pointless to other people, but for me, it's super exciting. I've been obsessed with this. So I think it's really a cool way of using AI with an existing library. They're just using it to basically go through their library and pick things that work together. So this is the kind of AI tool that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and it's got a pretty intuitive interface, nice and simple. You got your levels for each track, along with mute buttons, solo buttons, trash, and a few other things. And then, like you mentioned, the refresh. So I could see one totally going down the rabbit hole with this and playing around.
And it's in beta. It's not a finished product yet.
Yeah.
So,
and even just for ideating, like you might not be able to like create a top 40 hit from this, but just to work some ideas through and get some inspiration, or even just like have some like make some chill lo-fi beats to get some work done.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's at splice.com. Check the show notes for that. Gray, what's your momentous pick this week? You're going back to the well.
Doctor Who seasons 5 through 8. And this is the reason why I would like to have actually physical media, or even the access to buy digital media. Season 7 is not available to purchase on iTunes. Everything else is. All they have is the Day of the Doctor 50th anniversary special, which is frustrating. Mm-hmm. And several of the episodes in these seasons, when you play them on Amazon, on Apple TV, have static as their English soundtrack. I had to, like a pleb, stream this from my phone to my Apple TV, which the quality was better for some reason. Fortunately, I own season 8 through, I guess 13 we're on now? I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I've ditched Prime, and I'll be watching, doing my rewatch through there.
Just as well, since they're
through the TV app.
They're in poopifying Prime with ads, unless you want to pay $2.99 a month extra nowadays.
I paid the $2.99, but now that I'm done watching those seasons of Doctor Who, I'm canceling that.
Totally understandable. But it's like, yeah.
They'll get my $2.50 out of me if I find a series I want to watch.
Exactly. But as long as you can turn it on and off, fine.
Easy peasy.
Because it's like, I mean, it's only been like a couple of months now since we subscribed to YouTube Premium, and that combined with our PVR and other streaming stuff, it's like ads make me even crazier now.
I'm sorry.
So my wife's birthday is coming up, and the number one thing that she has asked for is the thing that I don't want to get, which is YouTube Premium. And she desperately wants it. And I'm just like, I'm so cheap. I'm like, I'll watch the ad. I'm fine watching the ad. And she's like, no, this is the thing
Happy
I want
wife,
more.
happy life. Happy wife, happy life. You can always make more money, Will, but you can't make more time.
Well,
How much more YouTube you can watch?
Well,
you know, sit through those ads.
I think maybe the average viewer won't know this, but my wife is all about living in the moment now, and she doesn't want to waste her moments watching ads. So
I hear you. I hear you. You just find something else to cancel or cut out or whatever.
I would watch the ads. This is where I'm just like, I'm
get your priorities in order, sir.
All right.
Okay. My momentous pick this week was a Valentine's present from my lovely wife, and it was in the box a Atari 5200 trackball controller.
Nice.
Which is in fantastic shape, and got it right here as well. I managed to try a little Centipede with it. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of games it works with. Centipede, Millipede, Real Sports Football, which I've got here as well. I've got Centipede in the 5200 at the moment. But yeah, wow, I was like totally blown away.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So and it works great, and it's of course the industrial design it matches the Atari 5200 perfectly. So yes, I'm a 52-year-old man with another device from 1982, 42 years ago. Anyhow, that's my momentous pick this week. I've had a chance to try it a little bit, and I look forward to using it even more.
Awesome.
It can't be worse than the terrible Atari 5200 joysticks. All right, let's get to our momentous projects. What's your project this week, Will?
So it's from a couple weeks ago, but I released a looper with a couple of looper friends of mine, Arbon the Ghost and Sir Skulls. And this is actually volume 2. We released volume 1, I think a year or two ago. Style benders. So yeah, really a fun one, a eclectic mix of stuff. So yeah, if you want to listen to classics such as No Cell the Finisher, The Ghost Rocked, Coke Nose Drip, and Black Eyed Scorpion.
Fantastic.
Beautiful.
Where can people find Style Benders Volume 2, Will?
Either on Table Beats app or Tableist.net.
Excellent. Gray, we've been waiting. What momentous project do you have for us this week?
Nothing that I can connect you to that belongs to me, but I'm actually printing a bunch of this right now. Multiboard.io. This is a 3D printed storage system. It can be vertical, horizontal, mounted on a surface, mounted off a surface. I printed the mini kit. Took 13 hours and printed beautifully. I'm printing the accessories. Well, I've just paused the print, but as soon as we're done recording, we're going to print that now. There's also a really cool multi-board designer. I've got a few ideas for some design pieces that I'm going to be building myself. This thing's great. So I've got some IKEA, I think it's Scatus stuff. I've got some wall control stuff. This is me saying I'm taking my future into my own hands. The really cool thing, can I tell you the really cool thing? And hopefully I'll be able to show you this as soon as I get my new main board. It looks like it's white, but when you shine UV light on it, the board glows orange.
Very cool.
And the accessories glow blue.
Well, we look forward to the restoration of your video signal in an upcoming episode so we can see some of these things that you make. But yeah, there's no shame in having a project that's like setting up your lab. That's fantastic. You're putting the pieces in place to have a more productive environment, and super cool.
It's awesome. If you guys want some, let me know. I will print it for you.
All righty. The lovely and talented co-host of ours, you may remember from months ago, Tasha Custode, she has yet another YouTube video for us called Gemini Advanced is here. Hands-on with Gemini Advanced features. So Google last week decided to rebrand their their AI efforts from Google Bard to Google Gemini, and they've got various flavors, including Nano, Pro, Ultra, something. But of course, the models in the background have different names. So, I mean, Google, like, they 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They're harmonizing their branding, but they're still making it confusing somehow. So you can find out Tasia's work at www.tasiacustodi.com or youtube.com/TasiaCustodi. And speaking of Tasia, she and I had another episode of AI Named This Show, which dropped last Friday, where we got into the nitty-gritty of Sora from OpenAI, which represents a step change in generative video from thanks to their AI models, video models. So really, really cool stuff. You can find out all about that at AINamedThisShow.com. And of course, you can find out more about us here at Momentous at Momentus.tv. Gentlemen, we did it. We went longer than expected, but we had a lot to get out of our system while Tasia's not here. A lot of good gaming goodness. Gaming goodness. I need to work on my language skills. Yeah. So well, hopefully we see you next week. Yeah. And until then, we hope your week is truly
momentous.
Yeah.